Kia ora, hello, and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we talk to new, emerging and experienced artists from around New Zealand about their creative journey, their art practice and process. I'm Mandy Yarkich. To celebrate 50 episodes, my son Brody has created some new intro music for you to enjoy. I hope you like it. And I want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank you for listening and for your support on this new and exciting journey of podcasting. I have met 50 incredible New Zealanders who have enriched my life so much, and I hope their stories have had the same effect on you. This week I talked to Lucy Melville. She is a painter, creative entrepreneur, business coach and mum based in Mt Maunganui, Aotearoa, New Zealand.
I guess this really is taking the stuff I loved from my corporate life and combining it with the thing I love in my art life. And the thing I loved about my corporate role, and I managed a team in the end for a number of years, managed a business and a big consultancy. But the thing I liked about that was really helping others grow.
Lucy's work centres around energetic, geometric shapes with strong, vibrant colour. Her latest work features some of the most stunning birds found on Earth, combined with shape and contrasting colour to reflect their spiritual meaning. As well as managing a busy full-time art practice, Lucy is on a mission to help artists learn the skills to share and sell their art with confidence, combining the key business skills she learnt in her 15-year corporate career and experience from building her own art business over the last 5 years. Her Unleash Your Art membership program, one-to-one business coaching and artist courses are designed to support artists to learn the skills to enable them to share and sell their art with confidence. This episode will be especially interesting for artists who are looking for support managing the business side of their art practice. Lucy and I have a great chat about how her corporate career has informed her approach to her art practice and creative business, how a head injury changed her attitude to her life and work, and the ways geometric shape and form inspire her so much. You can see her stunning work on our blog at creativematters.co.nz, and if you want to learn more about her Unleash Your Art program and see more of her work, check out her website lucymelville.com. Calling Lucy in Mt Maunganui. Hi Lucy, how are you?
Hi, Maddie. I'm so good. So great to be here.
Yeah, it's so lovely to meet you finally after observing all these amazing things that you do on social media.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, it's awesome to be here to chat with you today.
We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. I know you were born in England. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah, so I was born in England, moved here when I was just before I was 1. So I've lived most of my life in New Zealand. So my mum is English. My dad is a Kiwi. And so we came over, back in 86 and had a great childhood. I was lucky to be, I guess, guided and inspired by my grandmother who loved art. She did gorgeous watercolors and pastels and just was somebody who really just took joy in creating in lots of different ways. So she also did amazing ceramics, something I've tried but I'm terrible at. But yeah, she was really clever and just really, she kind of showed me what it was just to kind of have the joy of creating. So very much inspired by that growing up. For sure.
Oh, that sounds good. I was the same actually. I had a grandmother who inspired me hugely.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. And so as a child, were you sort of making and creating, do you think, or was that something that came a bit later?
I loved art. Yeah, I did art all through school. So I chose to do all the art boards, and those of you watching who did bursary art and photography and all those things, spending countless hours putting together your art boards for marking. And no, I really loved that. And it was something I love PE and I love my sport, but I love my art, and they were my two loves. And so, I dropped maths as soon as I possibly could, and picked up the artistic subjects when I was able. Yeah, and I did that all the way through to finishing school.
Oh, wow. And then leaving
Yeah.
school, were you sort of looking for a creative artistic career?
I always wanted to be an artist one day, but I really struggled leaving because I felt that there was a lot of pressure to go to university and I wasn't convinced that it was for me. And my dad desperately wanted me to go, and I was like, well, I don't know what I wanted to do. And he's like, well, why don't you just do something you love, art? And for me, I didn't want to spend that money and spend that time doing something because I loved it. If I wanted to go to uni, I really wanted to get some skills out of it that I felt were going to benefit me really well in that period of my life. And as much as, I would have been creating, for me, I was like, I want to learn a little bit more about life and business, and I want to understand a little bit more outside of that space. So I didn't know what that meant so far as uni. It wasn't appealing for me just to go down a general business route. So I did the thing my parents dreaded, and I went traveling. And I said, I'm not, I went at the age of 18 and didn't come home until just before my 22nd birthday. So to the horror of them. But I just did an early OE and I loved it. And it gave me time to kind of sit in a bit of experience outside of life and figure out, okay, if you are going to be working and, making money from something, and it's not art right now, what do you think it should be? And I just met lots of people doing different things and I picked up random jobs along the way. I mean, I think I started in London as a lifeguard, going around all the pools and working in a pub. And then I got brought into the recruitment agency who I was lifeguarding for, and I started to move up there. And then I ultimately met a lady working for another company, who we were looking after managing a body corporate for a big block of flats. And she was a quantity surveyor, and she was basically managing the financials of these renovations that they were doing. And I'd never heard of this, vocation before. And I was like, well, what do you do? And she's like, well, I'm not an architect. I'm not a builder. I'm somebody who looks at the money, but has to quantify what goes into a design. And I was like, I hate maths. Why is this interesting to me? And it was really weird. It was like the first thing I've heard somebody talk to me about where I was like, I don't know why, but this sounds interesting for me.
Mm.
And I still don't really understand why that was, but it was, I was also probably a little bit tactical. I didn't want to, after working full time for a few years and making money as a young person, I didn't really want to go full time back to university. And I was like, well, I also want to do something I can study in the evenings while I'm working so I don't have debt. And I was really quite practical about that. I wanted that to be an outcome that I could get from, a career that would allow me to move through the ranks and make good money over time. And that was at the time kind of my driver alongside being interested in this. And it just so happened that you only needed to do a diploma at night to get a job starting in this. And so that's what I did. I came home and I started doing a diploma in the evenings while working.
Mm.
And so it's perhaps not hugely inspirational around, like, I just, I was like, I loved I just was hugely passionate about this, and therefore I wanted to study it. But it was something that I was definitely intrigued by, and it just ticked lots of other boxes. So I felt that was a sign. And I went down that route for, when was that? That was 2006. I studied, and then, that was up until last year. So I had a long career doing this over that time.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you must have known, you must have had some sort of insight, because it's obviously kind of worked out for you, hasn't it?
Well, I think it's interesting now looking back, because like I say, I didn't like maths, and a lot of it is mathematical. What I did in that role was, review an architectural design and quantify how much it's going to cost to build it. And so it was very mathematical, but I think what I liked about it, it was quite strategic as well. And you had to think about the gaps and what might be missing. And how is it going to come together? And I realized that something as along with what I liked about art, I also like problem solving, and I really like, um, I like, the strategic side of doing things.
Mm,
And so I think that really appealed to me in
mm.
that role.
And also
So
having that using maths in a way that was so much more practical and sort of made sense. I always used to find
yes,
maths at
yeah,
school was just this crazy stuff in the sky that I had no idea how it could ever
yeah,
be relevant, stuff like
yes.
trigonometry and, all that crazy stuff. So I guess, when you can see maths in a practical sort of environment and it makes sense to what you're doing,
Yeah.
it just makes more sense overall.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought of it like that, but I think you're right. I think when you apply it in a way that's, I've always been intrigued by buildings, so that's probably it was applied in a way in something I was interested in. So yeah, I think you're right. It was presented in a different package, and it was
Mm.
appealing all of a sudden. And so yeah, I did a bit of painting after school. Um, I actually put on a little exhibition before I left London to pay for my ticket. I painted, I don't know, 15, 20 paintings and put them up at the local yacht club for a little exhibition, and got my $1,500 to go to London. So that, I was, I
Mm.
guess, a little bit entrepreneurial then around the way I did things. And I like to go about things in a different way. I didn't want to kind of just go, oh, you need to do this next, even if it
Mm.
didn't feel right.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I came back from London, studied this, had, started to get, move up the ladder and get very invested in that, corporate, life, and which has its good things, but it certainly has its things that aren't so appealing. Um, Burnout, and I think what happened, I started to become focused on the wrong things.
Mm.
It started to become about the next promotion and the next pay rise, and how can I, it became about the stuff that, looking back, that stuff shouldn't matter first. You know what I mean? That stuff's great if it comes as a byproduct of doing something you love. But I think I was driven in the wrong way around. And I think although I enjoyed my job, I started to really lose sense of who I was a bit, and I stopped painting as much. And I had a long period where I didn't paint at all. So probably about, how many years in was it? It was in 2016. So 10 years into my career, I was in the space of being quite anxious, you know, I turned into somebody who was busy to perhaps ignore everything else going on in my life. It was this go, go, go attitude. And, I started to get really accident prone, which is, those who know me will laugh because they're like, you're always clumsy. But it was on another level, it was
Mm.
kind of, I was doing silly things where I put a barbell, I was doing CrossFit and threw a barbell out and put my teeth went through my lip and I shattered my teeth. And
Oh my God.
it was kind of rushing from work to CrossFit and trying to pack all this life stuff in a way that wasn't present, and I'd lost that element of being present and finding that joy in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically I was in this space of starting to have these accidents, and then a major incident happened, um, playing ultimate frisbee, believe it or not. So basically, I was playing ultimate frisbee with my work colleagues who I loved. We did lots of things like this together. We had a great time. And me being the ultra competitive person, I still am competitive, but it's probably died down a bit since this. Um, Went for an intercept and collided with one of my good friends and good work colleagues who is 6'4" and much, much heavier than me. And I basically rebounded off his shoulder and had a really, really bad whiplash and a head knock that at the time we weren't really sure what it meant. But I guess to cut a long saga short, over the progression of those next 2 weeks, I started to break down. I couldn't talk anymore. I had major concussion, and everything in my life had to get put on hold.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing to go through.
Yeah, it was really scary. It was
Oh.
frightening. I lost, you don't, when you're young and you're kind of running around like this, you don't think about those things happening to you. And so I had this really big injury that, doctors were like, well, look, concussions, there's no answer. We don't know when you'll get better. We don't know if you'll get better. And, you likely will improve, but we can't tell you how or when. So I have never been very patient. I got into the space of go, go, go. Patience took a back seat. And it was kind of in my mind, the universe waking me up and saying, I'd even got into a marriage that I wasn't fulfilled in and I wasn't happy in because I'd lost myself along the way. So
Mm.
over the course of that period, it was major for me. It was probably 3 months of recovery. But I talk about this as I always talk about this because for me, this is where my life kind of started again. So for me, it's a very important, significant event that's
Mm.
happened in my life. And
Yeah.
it threw me on a completely different trajectory.
Wow, that's incredible. And, I mean, I guess you learned so much about yourself through that whole recovery phase. And so
Yeah.
how did you get out of it, or what did you have to do to move through that period?
Well, I guess it was a combination of things, really. I think there was a acceptance period where I wasn't accepting it, and I think that didn't help anything. It was that, I wasn't letting it just be how it had to be for a while. And then there was a period where I acknowledged it and spent a lot of time just lying on my back because really there was nothing else I could do. I couldn't socially, I had no ability to be around people without crying. I lost all, emotional, social, you know, verbal skills. I couldn't lift my head above kind of waist height because of I couldn't move my head past this because of the balance that I'd lost in my ears.
Wow.
And I was basically being forced to just stop and I feel consider where I was. And the only time I really started making true progress was when a friend of mine who's, very much on a spiritual journey and her dad's an energy healer, Reiki, some people know it as. And she said, look, she saw me immediately and she said, I think you would really benefit from talking to my dad. And I was kind of like, what's this all about? It sounds all a bit, hoodoo voodoo. And this experience started essentially allowing me to tap into where I'd got to before the injury and to start to think about where I was energetically
Mm.
and actually also start to be aware of my energy. And I hadn't tapped into that or perhaps been aware of that for far too long. So that was when I started to make progress. So I started to actually come out of it once I started to be in tune with where I was, the things that I had been burying and the things that perhaps I'd been ignoring, and just figuring out ways to stop trying to find happiness in all the things around me and start to try and
Mm.
find it within. And so that led to some confronting things. Um, initially I thought it was all work and I say I got caught up in the corporate thing. I loved work in lots of ways. I worked with amazing people and, I really did love it. But I was doing too much, trying to do too much all the time.
Mm.
And sometimes too much is you don't get as much done if you do a bit less,
That's
if you know what I
right.
mean, you can actually get more out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, that's a massive thing to go through. And so,
Yeah.
did you, when you were starting to feel better, did you start to come back to your art at that point?
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to think when I did my first painting. It's on our wall, actually, in our bedroom wall, because it's so significant for me. But it's yeah, over those 3 months, I kind of focused on getting better, and then getting back into work, and then reassessing what was in my life. And come the end of that year, 6 months later, unfortunately, my relationship ended. Um, it was sad, but it was the right thing. And
Mm.
it's something I don't regret it starting or ending the relationship, but it was part of the journey.
Yeah, that's a good way of
And
looking at it.
I started painting around that time as well.
Mm.
And so it was kind of like hitting the crumbling point of rock bottom. And from that, you start to rediscover things, I think. And so that's when the painting started.
And were you actually thinking, maybe painting would be good for me, good for my healing? Or were
Mm.
you feeling like I actually just need to go back to that place? Did it have that sort of feeling for you?
It was it's interesting how it worked because I basically went away to a women's retreat in Piha on my own for a week because I'd hit this horrendous place where I just wanted to escape everything. So I turned all of my comms off and I just essentially escaped to this place. And I was like, for some reason, I was like, I'm going to take a canvas and paint. And that was really you know, I'll see what I feel like doing when I get there. There was nothing more to it than that.
Mm.
And it just so happened I put the easel up with the canvas and I painted this piece in like 3 or 4 hours. It just came out of me. And it was, and it was very abstract. There's nothing really like what I'm doing now, but it was very, I had actually tried to do a few pieces before that point that came out, pretty horrible and pretty dark. And I think it was all a reflection of where I was at. But this piece just had this lightness to it and this, I guess, what kind of, for me, it just represented kind of the new start for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How incredible. And so was that the beginning of, you being an artist or thinking of yourself as an artist? And is that when you kind of let the corporate life go and sort of focused solely on your art?
Well, what I did was I essentially, after that, I was like, what is this? It had been 10 years probably since I'd painted until that period, a long time. And I just the geometry started to come to me. And so, you've seen my art, and those perhaps watching who have will know that that's a very strong influence for me. I'm really inspired by shape. I see certain things in my head in shape form, and I use that a lot. And so I started to get this inspiration for this very heavy geometric shape like work. So basically I started with this and I guess it had that really mathematical feeling to it. It probably was very influenced about where I've been, but I started to use a lot of I used tonal difference to create a 3D effect. And that was really the theme of that series I did. And I just started and I was like 3 or 4 paintings and I thought, why don't I just do an exhibition? I've never done a proper one. Okay, no one really knows that I do art per se, but why not?
Wow.
And
That's that
so
entrepreneurial way again coming through.
yeah, I guess I've always been someone who kind of goes, well, I don't really see why anyone else should define how or when I do things.
Mm. Mm.
It's kind of all in your own control. And for me, at that point, putting on an exhibition was kind of to be a celebration of the journey I'd been through, really. It had been such a traumatic time over that year. It was a big, I wanted to show people what had come from that in a positive light. For me, it was a really positive thing that had come out of, a pretty horrible time.
Mm. Absolutely. And was that
Yeah.
exhibition mostly, it was all geometric work at that time?
Yeah, it was my New Beginnings series, and I knew it was polarizing. It is polarizing. It's very strong, that series. It was, I loved it. I love color. It's very bright. It's very bold. Um, but I did it. I decided I'd just do it properly in a way that I was like, well, I believe I'm an artist. I'm going to put prices on it that I think I'm worth so far as my time and the energy into it, and I'm going to put
Mm.
it on like a proper night. And I have no expectation of what might come from it financially,
Mm.
but I'm just going to live it and believe it as if this is something worthwhile doing this way.
Mm.
But with the main message being, I want to show everyone I know kind of what's come out of life for me in the last year.
Yeah. And where did
And
you
so
um, where did you have that exhibition, Lucy?
I hired the Thievery Studio on K Road.
Mm-hmm.
And so I probably invested about $3,000 into the night. I was lucky I was earning well at that point. So for me, it was that was something I was willing to do because it was, whether I sold anything or not to cover that, it didn't matter for me. Because it was the point of everything was the important thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of shamelessly invited everyone I knew. I invited everyone I knew at work, all the directors I work with, and every friend and family, and it was, which is scary because, on the night you're sitting up and going, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah. It's
Um,
very brave.
yeah, yeah, and I guess, I'm someone who's kind of always acted in that way of going, it feels good, I'll do it. And then I have moments come closer to the time going, oh my God, do you realize what you're doing?
Yeah.
Um, but it was a huge success in lots of ways, like people, it was a beautiful evening to connect with everyone I knew and have a nice glass of wine. Um, I made more than $20,000 in a night. It
Wow.
was, and that wasn't expected.
Mm.
But what it did do is from the back of that, which I wasn't necessarily expecting, it gave me confidence to really believe that perhaps this was the time when that artistic career I'd always said would happen.
Yeah.
It was like that moment where I was like,
Mm.
okay, this is
Mm.
like everything that's happened has led me to this point.
Yeah, totally. And how appropriate that your exhibition was called New Beginnings. I mean, it was just
Yeah,
the beginning of your
yeah.
new life, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And that was really the simplicity of the meaning behind it. It was, for me, all those paintings told a story of something I'd gone through in that year after my separation and still really recovering from the head injury and so there was a lot of meaning in everything that had come out of those paintings. And yeah, the new beginnings, it really was reflective of kind of a new life that was coming to the
Mm.
forefront.
Yeah, totally. How incredible. And
Yeah.
so I mean that's just such an interesting, amazing journey and good on you for sort of grabbing the bull by the horns and you know, realizing your dream, I guess, in a way. But it's so
Yeah.
interesting now where you are that, all the things that have come before have so much informed what you're doing as a sort of entrepreneur and as a small business owner and as an
Yeah.
artist. It's like a lovely culmination of all the things that you've experienced through your adult life, I guess.
But yeah, very much so. I think, I love the fact that I've gone about it the way I have because my career, you know, a few weeks after that exhibition, I went part-time. So I told my bosses, I wanted to go down to 28 hours a week, which was very unheard of to do that if you weren't a mother. It's a good reason if you'd had kids, but not for a hobby.
Mm.
So that was a bit of a like, oh, okay, but they were all for it.
Mm.
And that was me kind of making that first next step towards realizing, okay, let's just take it slowly, but let's see what you might be able to build both in your own well-being
Mm.
and, mental space, do a bit less at work. And that, ironically, the less I did at work around that and the more I actually sat back a bit and just sat in what felt good, because that's what I'd obviously learned through that period is around being in tune and being in a place of a nice frequency of energy, and it I kept getting promoted and more money. It never come so easy than
Mm.
after all of this, and I was doing less, and that's not to say I was doing less so far as caring less, but I think I was so much more in tune with myself.
Yeah.
I had this balance
Mm.
reformed. It was quite amazing.
Mm.
um And yeah, I think what I started to realize that having a dream and doing something you loved, and I loved lots of things about my job, was really about the essence of why we're here, like why else be here?
Mm.
Do the things you love most and everything else comes.
Yeah, and sometimes
But I
having an accident or a traumatic moment. So many
mm,
people I've spoken to on this podcast have had moments
yeah,
like
right.
that where that's just
Yeah.
been is kind of reset in a way.
It is interesting. Same thing with, those artists I've spoken with over the last few years. And same thing, whether it's emotional, physical, trauma, it's really a driver to
Yeah.
creating.
It's great, but in a way it's a shame that it's only that we all feel like we need something to happen to make us kind of make that mental
Yeah.
shift. Like why
Yeah.
can't we just be open to it from the beginning?
Oh, I agree. And it's interesting that thought because, I knew I'd always get to this point at some point, but it is interesting reflecting on whether when it might have happened or how your life could have turned out if that event in particular didn't happen. I mean, I kind of believe if you're already in that place for that to happen, it's probably going to shake you out at some point. But
Yeah.
it is a fascinating thought that.
It's really interesting, isn't it? So if we go on to talking about your actual art practice, Lucy,
Yeah.
so you've talked a little bit about your geometric works, which
Yeah.
are not so much the entire focus, but still very much make an appearance in all the work that you do, really, doesn't it? And now, obviously, you have other series that have come along, like the Small But Mighty series, which
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love, and also Light and Flight. So you've introduced birds into your geometric world. Can you describe for somebody who doesn't know your work what your current work is like?
Yes, I can. So yeah, you're right. The next year I started to move into the bird space, if you will. So I've kind of become a bit of a bird lady. And that sounds like a big leap going from this heavy, geometric style to the birds. But for those who have seen or will look at my work, you'll see that there's still the influence. So I do. It's interesting. I just found an old art book yesterday where I looked at some of my 18-year-old work, and there's shape there too. So it's interesting. I thought it was a new thing, but it's not. I clearly have a real interest or a real resonance to shape. And I see, for me, when I see a scene or if I see a bird on a tree, I often see the bird in its form, but I see the tree it's on perhaps in shape. And so that's how that's kind of evolved in my work.
Yeah.
And basically, I now have a combination of sometimes softer geometry. I still do move between the harder lines and the softer shape, but I do but it's still very much there, and it's incorporated in a way that really complements the bird, depending on its spiritual meaning.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
It really
yeah,
does. And I love the sort of softness of the feathers and the birds with that sort of, like you say, the harder
yeah,
lines. And it gives it sort of a slight sort of modern contemporary feel, I guess. It's like you take a lot of artists paint birds, but you're taking it to quite a sort of unique place with that sort of connection with the geometry or the geometric shapes as well. And so you quite often work on circles,
yeah.
but not necessarily. And your color palette, I mean, it's just so beautiful. And I love your really stark contrast color in the background.
Yeah, I love circles. I My first exhibition was all circular wood panels, so it's definitely a thing. I think the main thing is I really like working on wood. I've discovered there's something about the texture when I use acrylics, but there's something about the texture of it that really appeals to me. So I have done canvas pieces, but I don't find the enjoyment the same. There's something different about it. So I definitely think that's something I gravitate towards more. But yeah, I think there's something also into the fact that with the geometry, I use a lot of masking to get really clean lines. And so working on the wood is nicer in that way. So I think it suits the kind of thing I do as well.
Yeah.
Quite nicely.
Yeah. So with your Small But Mighty series in particular, I love the way, the works are actually quite small, but then the birds within the works are really quite small as well. But then they've got
Yes.
this really punchy, mighty sort of color in the background, which is just one color. So can you talk about how you put that together?
Yeah, I love strong contrast. So that really appeals to me. I really like, you're right. It's a real feature. I often have a very bold, dark, whether it's a deep teal or like an Indian ink background. And then I often layer on the bird I often use gold. Gold is just a thing that I keep coming back to, perhaps in a branch. There might be some little shape in gold. I just like that because I feel like, for me, the bird's the star of the show. And that's, for me, is the way to make it really pop. And like you say, I think there is that element of being attracted to that more modern feel of work. So I do like that it has, those particular pieces have quite a real simplicity to it. But I think they draw your eye in. And that's what I really, I'm proud of with those pieces, I think, because they're small, but I think they make you stop.
Yeah, they
and want to have a
definitely
look.
do. They're beautiful. I mean, they they have a simplicity about them, but then they have a lot of detail about them as well. So that it's that nice sort of, I guess it's a bit of a juxtaposition in a way that you've got quite a lot going on, but it's sort of presented in a way that has a real calmness about it in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So just kind of I spent a lot of time detailing the feathering. And I really do like to try and create the softness around the bird because again, the contrast, right? So it's the contrast of the shape and the color against that softness of the living thing on this piece.
Yeah,
Is just something that I really just enjoy doing.
Yeah, they're very beautiful. I love them. And how do you actually go about creating one of those paintings?
So those pieces, first step is with the wood panels, which all of those are done on, well, actually two were on canvas, but the majority of those I did them on wood. So I will put a couple of layers of GAC over these just to seal them. So that's just to stop the color leaching through or to, deal with the moisture on the back as well if anything hit it. And then I will work with the kind of color I'm wanting to explore with. And I'll often make a decision on that background color based on, for the P Waka Waka, I used a very beautiful moss green. It's like a forest green because in my mind, that's where I always see one, when I'm walking through the bush. So that was very much related to his home. So yeah, I'll apply the background color and then just start to, I really like to use watercolor pencils to mark out my pieces. And that's because I do freehand a lot of it and I do kind of make it up as I go a lot, especially my smaller work. And I'll just kind of sketch and then I'll just use a piece of kitchen towel or something with a bit of water just to take it off if it's not right.
Oh, that's good. And you don't sketch the drawing and then paint around that. You paint across the whole piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do. I paint across the whole thing. And then just work the composition generally with bigger stuff generally I'll have a bit of a composition in mind, but sometimes I'll be a bit fluid and work it onto the piece as I go. And then, once I've got that outline, I'll just start blocking in, the base colors and then start adding layers of detail into the birds.
And you have a photograph as a reference?
I very rarely have one photograph I look at. I look at a multitude of photographs. A lot of photographs you find or get are lacking in detail in lots of places. So a lot of my work I make it up based on what I've seen in details in other photos. So it's sometimes a bit of a mishmash of just actually studying the bird itself. And then I get to a point where I feel like I kind of know how a kea's feet are or know how their tail is. And I'll just kind of make it work in the pose or position that it's in.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of working off the cuff. I know that there's some wonderful groups now or wonderful artists, photographers who are, charging a small fee to license their photos. So that's probably a place I'll start to go down more because that would be much easier. But I do think I enjoy that part in a way as well because I'm kind of.
And you definitely still capture the bird. I mean, it's there's no doubt what kind of bird it is that you're painting. So is it really important to you to be absolutely sort of perfectly realistic and right, or you're happy if it doesn't have the exact features that it might have?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy for it to be a little bit of artistic license. And I think most people, I've had some people comment, my tui has been really popular, but it's a lot brighter, the tui on that page is not the tui you see in your tree. A tui in a tree is very quite dark and you see the iridescent colors in the light. But for me, I've locked on to the iridescence and I've made that, the tui. And I think I do that with a lot of, looking around, if I really look at things, I really do, what's the word, probably exaggerate the color a little bit. But I like that. That's kind of a part of how I do it.
Yeah, totally. And it feels very much part of your practice, Yeah.
Yeah,
And it gives it some sort of extra charm, I guess, that feels quite like you know. It's a point of
yeah.
difference in some ways.
Yeah, I think so. And I love color. So for me, I want them to pop, and doing that makes it happen a
Yeah,
bit more dramatic.
absolutely. And
Mm.
the small but mighty birds, each of those birds kind of tell a story, don't they? And you've chosen them for special reasons. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that series came about because I basically left my day job last year in June. I went back from maternity leave. I had my daughter. I went back from maternity leave and went, this is the time. That was the time I started to go, right, I can spend 3 days a week now creating again. And I think what had happened between those exhibitions I talked about earlier and then I got pregnant, had my baby. Obviously, mums out there know that that's a big distraction. And so I hadn't created as much new content for a while. I'd done paintings here and there, but my focus had been elsewhere. And when I made the decision to go out on my own, I wanted I'd not done small. So that was the first thing. And that's actually was more of a challenge because painting small detail is harder.
Mm.
And I wanted to start exploring some other birds from around the world. So there was a few birds that had come to me in my mind and through different, for example, I was born in England. I really wanted to do a red robin. So that was something that I was like, I really want to do that. How do I kind of make it work with a combination of birds? I wanted to do a piwaka waka. I wanted to do a titipunamu, which is this beautiful tiny little bird that you find here. So these just birds came to me when I actually looked into the meaning of them. They were quite poignant at that time. And, birds carry quite the spiritual thing with birds is that they kind of a messenger to other worlds,
Mm.
between worlds. And they have these meanings. And every time I had this bird that came up and I looked into it, I was fascinated by the meaning because it was very relevant to what I was going through at that point in time.
Mm.
So yeah, that was, it would come to me and then I'd look them up and I'd be like, well, that's amazing. And then I'd be like, I love that. I'm gonna bring it to life and tell the story of it.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
on your website, I love the way you kind of explain that story alongside the artwork, which just kind of gives the viewer another insight into your work, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Lucy, on top of all this amazing art that you make, you also have a very sort of entrepreneurial streak and obviously use your sort of experience that you have sort of gained from your corporate career. And you are offering all these amazing things to people through your Unleash Your Art membership program and also
Yeah.
on various online workshops and courses and different sort of experiences. So can you tell us all about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess this really is taking the stuff I loved from my corporate life and combining it with the thing I love in my art life. And the thing I loved about my corporate role, and I managed a team in the end for a number of years, managed a business and a big consultancy. But the thing I liked about that was really helping others grow. And mentoring and supporting them to essentially get to where they wanted to in their careers. So that was a big thing I was going to miss. And so I felt that, with the skills I was lucky to have learned through that career and apply to my own art business, by the time I left, I got to the point where had built a little side business using everything I'd known in those 15 years in construction. So I kind of felt, well, a lot of artists I met really struggled with that side of things, really just didn't know how to approach, the first thing about making money from what they did. And I found that the mindset was a big part of it, lack of confidence, lack of self-belief. So many talents out there who are so good, but don't believe it, and don't believe it's possible. So I started offering and still do offer, free trainings, and we talk about anything between, how to price your artwork, how to plan a week to actually do things that would help you build a creative business. And I offer those once a month in a free Facebook group. So that's the Unleash Your Art community. I just finished one this morning, and it's brilliant. And we cover, I try and cover not just the business of doing and the making the money, but the foundational stuff around, like I said, self-belief and trust in what you do. And even just being able to say and tell someone, I am an artist.
Yeah.
Just saying those words.
Yeah, that is a big one for a lot of people, isn't it? And so that community, do you kind of all come together and then you speak to the group, or is it like quite a sharing sort of environment, or how does that work?
Yeah, I encourage people to share what they're working on. It generally is I ask the group, I put out a variety of topics and ask what the group would like to learn about or like to, have a conversation about. And so they vote, and I go with what is needed, basically. And then I go live on Facebook, and it's great because everyone shares what they're going through. And I think the nicest thing about it and the feedback I've had is that it makes everyone feel like they're not alone in that feeling of whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
So it's a big part of it, realizing, no, I'm not the only one feeling like this. And okay, there are things I can do to help myself that others are sharing or I'm helping them with. So it's very fulfilling. It's really quite beautiful, the connections I've been lucky to make in that so far. And yeah, like you said, I launched a membership which is paid on a monthly basis on the back of that. And that's for those artists who are at any particular point in their journey. They might not have ever sold anything. We've got artists who sell all the time. But we are a community where there's a live Facebook group where if anyone's stuck with anything, we put it on the community and everyone, adds their experience and help. We do a monthly business content session where we delve into like a specific part of business side. We do like a little marketing challenge once a month. So it's something small you can do to get yourself out there. And then I have a group coaching call. So we're all on a Zoom call. It's interactive, and a couple of people can talk about what they're going through. So that's a really special space.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I mean, that's just, it's something that could be such an incredible support for so many artists, and not necessarily new artists, is it? I mean, some people have been making for a long time, but still haven't quite got their head around the business side.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Like some artists are really successful, selling in one space, but perhaps they want to improve their online presence, or so there's all these kind of gaps that we all have in one way or another, and how to kind of help people, fill those and get more knowledge. So
it sounds so brilliant. Well done. That's an incredible service you're providing. And do you also have that sort of one-on-one coaching aspect?
Yeah, I do offer that. I offer 3 and 6 month packages. So that's basically an opportunity for anyone who kind of just wants to be able to talk about their specific space and, place in their journey at that time, and gets a bit of focus around how to, I think the one thing I come across most is overwhelm. I've got all these things I want to do or need to do, but I'm so overwhelmed I can't move. And so I really help help these people unlock this stuff. And again, a lot of it is combined with helping them work through some of the mental blocks. Often we're blocking ourselves because of some emotional beliefs and things that we all have. And so that's, I offer that as well. It's great.
And I imagine you'd be so good at that. You've just got that sort of nature and that sort of rapport where, you're an easy person to connect to. And that really comes across with your social media work that you do and the videos that you put out. And, you are a person that, people want to get to know. You've got that quality, which is really nice. And you're just the perfect person, I think, to support artists in this way. It's really cool.
Oh, thank you, Mandy. That's really lovely for you to say that. And I just on that, I think the one thing I really try and encourage is that authenticity is just the key to everything, right? Like being yourself. And that's one thing I just try and do myself, but also encourage others to do. And just the amount of progress I've been able to see in those artists who have become brave to do that is really amazing. So
I can imagine.
yeah,
I bet that just
yeah.
brings you so much sort of joy and satisfaction, that kind of work.
Oh, I have to say, I get as much joy out of that, if not more sometimes. I love painting so much, but this is it. I love the helping,
Mm.
others progress factor. It's
Mm.
so special.
And do you
Yeah.
find that sort of it helps you along your own art practice or inspires you down your own path?
Definitely. Oh, I'm inspired by the ladies in this group every day. And it really does make you go. They'll be talking about an exhibition that they've put themselves out for and been accepted to. And it inspires you and motivates you, It's like I get lots from it as well.
Mm.
It's a beautiful situation.
Mm.
And I think that's a nice thing about a community like that. There's this, no judgment, just love and just sharing, which in turn motivates everyone in the group. So,
Yeah, I can
great.
imagine. So,
Yeah.
as an artist yourself, have you ever sort of had that time where you've had a real creative block,
Mhm.
or you're just sort of experiencing problems in your work and you're not sure what to do or who to go to? Do you find that
Yeah.
yourself personally?
Yeah, I was talking about this morning actually around kind of the block or, you know, um, procrastination that seems to go on, if you will. And I think I've started to realize that just starting, even if just for 5 minutes, is how I manage to move myself out of that space now. And that might sound strange, but I think just putting 5 or 10 minutes into doing something that day rather than feeling like, oh, I just can't do anything, it's
Mm.
sometimes enough to just start to get some momentum out of it for me.
Mm.
Um, and whenever I start to do that again and just put brush to canvas or brush to wood, I just get all these ideas again, and it helps me reconnect with. I feel like just sometimes, even if you're doing intuitive painting, that's like, really nothing. There's no intention behind it. It's just, and I did that last week for half an hour where I just got a piece of paper out and I just made shapes and marks. And after that, I had like 6 ideas for things that came out that evening. And
Mm.
I find that that's the best way. It doesn't always work out like that, of course, but I do find that's the best way for me to get going again, if you will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just sort of getting back on the horse,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, totally.
do you, I mean, you're obviously a busy mum with a 2-year-old and you've got, different elements to your business and you're a busy artist and no doubt you do all sorts of other things as well. So how do you
Mm.
actually manage that sort of healthy life work balance?
Yeah, that's really important for me. And I've realized that, well-being, going back to the head injury time, that has to come first for me. And I really encourage those I, work with to do the same, because I think if energetically you can start in a space where you're present and you're thinking about the things you can be grateful for and you're positive, it really can only it off more often than not will spur your day into a really good direction.
Mm.
So I meditate every day. I try and exercise 3 or 4 times a week. Just get out to the beach. I'm lucky to live here in Mt Maunganui where I can walk to the beach in 3 minutes. And I make that priority now, because I used to put it too far. It was kind of like if I got round to it,
Yeah.
and that didn't help anything. And I find if I focus on that, everything else kind of flows much
Mm.
better.
Mm.
I'm more present with my daughter. I don't try and load myself up with work, and I'm more focused as well. Yeah.
And how do you, I mean, are you working full time around your daughter's needs or how does that work?
No, she goes to daycare 3 days a week. We could put her in more, but I want to have that time with her right now. And I think that's what I love about this, what I've been able to create as well, my business. I get to choose how I do that.
Mm.
So I work probably about 24, 26 hours a week. So I have to really be focused with that time because it's not a
Mm.
lot. Um, but yeah, it's important for me. I get Monday and Friday with her, and we hang out, and she gets the fun with friends at daycare in the middle of the week, and I get to knuckle down. But it's a nice
Mm.
balance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds brilliant. I mean, it's
yeah.
often it can be difficult for a lot of us to kind of figure that out, can't it? It's
Oh,
not always
yeah.
easy. Yeah.
No.
So let's just get on to our final 4 questions, which I'm now asking every guest.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to have some really interesting sort of different answers from different guests. So your first question, Lucy, is who is your favourite artist of all time, and have they influenced your work or the way you work?
It's a good question. I can't say there's anyone who's kind of my favorite of all time. I do know that in school days, I had a bit of a fascination with Mondrian, who obviously had the shape element of his work. And so I do look back at my school books, and Mondrian features heavily. So I'd say him, but I'm inspired by, I really can look through Pinterest or Instagram and just inspired by all sorts of artists, to be honest. I just get so many ideas from, what others are doing, regularly. So
yeah, well, there's so much out there, isn't there, to inspire? Yeah. And, being able to find it so much more easily than in the old days is pretty good.
Totally. Yeah, so true.
And as an artist, what would you say is your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge. Biggest challenge probably is just still through all of this, when I have time to work, making sure I do prioritize the creation. I think sometimes when you turn your art into a business, there's a risk that all the stuff, the noise around social media and mailing lists or whatever you've got going, and they're important, but if you're not creating, you don't have content and you're not getting the fulfillment of what you love. So
yeah,
that's probably my biggest challenge and one of my biggest focuses at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. It is tricky. And what would you say to your younger artistic self?
Oh, it's a great question. I just say play more. I think you can end up taking it so seriously when you're at school and wanting to get the best grades in your submissions, and I think sometimes you're trying to follow an influence of all the the people who've been really successful, and you can get too influenced by that I think. And I think, like anything, being yourself and following that is the best possible rule of life, I think.
And last question for you, why do you make what you make?
Oh, because it just makes me happy. I just love, at the moment, every time I can create something with loads of color, with my art, I just always imagine it in a way that I want people to stop and it distracts them to the point where they have to stop and enjoy it. And that's when that's how I end up creating, with this kind of really big, bold feeling of life, and also just the nature element, which I'm so inspired by, whether it's just shape or the birds. There's always a nature element in it for me. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Very inspired by that.
And, for people listening, you can find your work on your website, lucymelville.com. And you have some originals available still from that latest series, Small But Mighty.
Yes, I do have a few left. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're selling very well, I've noticed.
Yes, no, they got snapped up. The New Zealand birds got snapped up in about 24 hours, I think. It was it was amazing. Yeah. So still got little hummingbird and little blue tit. So if you're a fan of some more exotic birds, take a look for sure.
And you're not doing prints of that series, are you? But you have prints available from other series?
Yes, I have a variety of limited edition prints that I don't print everything, but I will be slowly adding to that collection over time. But there's some special ones up there.
And it's a great website. And also, for the people who might be interested in joining you with your Unleash Your Art program, or any of the other sort of workshop opportunities, they can find that. We've got a link on the bottom of your blog post, but also they can find that on your website.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a tab on my website called Unleash Your Art, and you can see everything that's on offer there, and that includes the free group, but like you say, the membership is also there. That opens 3 times a year, and it's actually opening tonight until the 4th of August. It will close. So if you're interested in that, all the details are there.
That's brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much, Lucy. I think that people will have really enjoyed your story, and I think there's so much potential for heaps of people listening for, helping them to develop what they're doing if they work alongside you. I think it would be a really great sort of supportive aspect to anyone's art practice. So it's been great listening to what you have to offer and to meet you. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Mandy. I really appreciate your time to speak to me. It's been amazing.
Cool. We'll see you soon.
All
Bye.
right, see you soon.
See you.
Bye.